in the vast, unforgiving stretch of the Montana frontier, where the wind whispered secrets through the pines, a young widow named Eliza dragged another heavy log toward her half-built cabin. Her hands bled from splinters. Her back ached like fire, but she wouldn't stop. Not when this was all she had left of her dreams. Little did she know from the ridge above. A weathered cowboy named Jack watched her every day, his heart twisting with a longing he thought he buried with his family years ago. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to Western Tales of Frontier and leave a like and comment if this story touches your heart. Eliza had come to this wild corner of the world 2 years back, trailing after her husband Thomas, who'd promised her a life of adventure and abundance. He'd been a dreamer full of fire and plans for a homestead that would outshine the stars. But fever took him fast, leaving her alone, in a sea of endless grass and towering mountains. No family to call on, no town close enough for easy help. She could have packed up and headed back east, to the safety of crowded streets and familiar faces. But something stubborn burned in her, a refusal to let grief win. So she stayed, piecing together that cabin one log at a time, teaching herself to notch wood with an axe that felt too heavy in her grip. The days blurred into a rhythm of sweat, and solitude mornings she'd rise before dawn, boiling coffee over a campfire that spat sparks into the chilly air. She'd hike to the forest's edge, select a straight pine, and fell it with swings that echoed like thunder. Dragging it back was the hardest part. Tying ropes around it, harnessing her mule. Old Bess, who was as weary as she was. By noon, her muscles screamed, but she'd keep going, fitting the logs into place, chinking the gaps with mud and moss. Evenings brought a bone-deep exhaustion, but also a quiet pride. This cabin wasn't just shelter. It was her defiance against the emptiness that threatened to swallow her whole. From his perch on the ridge, Jack had first spotted her months ago, during one of his long cattle drives. He was a man carved from the land itself, tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes the color of storm clouds, and a beard streaked with gray. Life had been cruel to him. 10 years earlier, his wife, Mary, had died in childbirth, taking their infant son with her. The ranch they'd built together felt like a ghost town. After that, Jack threw himself into the work, herding cattle across the plains, sleeping under the stars to escape the hollow rooms back home. But the loneliness nodded at him, a constant ache that no amount of whiskey or wide-open spaces could fill. He longed for the warmth of a family, the simple joy of shared laughter around a dinner table. Yet at 45, he figured that dream was as dead as the wildflowers in winter. At first, watching Eliza was just curiosity. He'd ride by on his way to check traps, or scout for strays, pausing to see this slip of a woman wrestling with timbers twice her size. She couldn't have been more than 30, with hair like burnished copper, tied back in a practical braid, and a face smudged with dirt but lit by determination. What was she doing out here alone? It puzzled him, then worried him. Winters in these parts were killers. Snowdrifts that buried everything, winds that howled like wolves. She wouldn't make it without help. But Jack wasn't one to intrude. He'd learned the hard way that people carried their own burdens, and meddling often led to more pain. One crisp autumn afternoon, as the leaves turned golden red, disaster struck. Eliza was hoisting a log onto the wall. When the rope snapped, the timber tumbled, pinning her leg against the ground. Pain exploded through her like lightning, and she cried out, the sound lost in the vastness. She tried to shove it off, but her strength failed. Hours passed. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows. Panic set in. Night would bring cold and maybe predators. Tears streamed down her face, not just from the hurt, but from the crushing weight of her isolation. "Thomas," she whispered, "why did you leave me to this?" Jack had been riding the ridge that day, his horse Rusty, picking its way through the rocks. He heard the faint echo of her cry and spurred forward, heart pounding, cresting the hill. He saw her trapped, pale and trembling. Without a word, he dismounted, his boots crunching on the dry earth. "Hold on, ma'am." He called, his voice gruff but steady. He knelt beside her, assessing the log. "This might hurt a bit, but I'll get you free." Eliza looked up, startled. His face was lined with years of sun and sorrow, but his eyes held a kindness that pierced her fear. Who are you?" she gasped. "Name's Jack Harlan, been ranching these parts for years. Saw you from up there." He didn't mention the watching. It felt too personal. With careful leverage from a branch, he shifted the log, just enough for her to pull her leg out. She winced, biting her lip to stifle a sob. Her ankle was swollen, likely sprained, but not broken, thank you. she murmured as he helped her to her feet. She leaned on him, the warmth of his arms surprising after so much cold. He nodded, awkward. "You shouldn't be out here alone. It's dangerous work, I have to," she said simply. "It's all I got." Jack glanced at the cabin. Solid start, but far from done. Something stirred in him, a pull he couldn't ignore. "Let me help with that log just this once." She hesitated, pride warring with necessity. But the pain waned out all right. Just this once, that once stretched into days. Jack returned the next morning with fresh ropes and tools from his ranch. He showed her better ways to notch the wood, how to use pulleys for lifting. At first, their talk was sparse. Weather the land. Practical tips, but as the cabin walls rose, so did the words between them. Over shared coffee by the fire, Eliza spoke of Thomas, how his laugh could light up a room, how his death left her adrift. Jack listened, his own walls cracking. "Lost my Mary and our boy," he admitted one evening, staring into the flames. "Thought I'd never feel whole again. Just kept moving, like if I stopped, the hurt would catch up." Eliza reached out her hand on his arm. "It does catch up, but maybe we don't have to face it alone." Their kindness grew roots. Jack brought supplies, flour, salt, a warm blanket for the coming chill. Eliza mended his torn shirt, cooked him a stew from wild game. He taught her to track deer. She shared stories from books she'd brought west, painting pictures of far-off places. Laughter crept in, tentative at first. Then Fuller Jack found himself looking forward to dawn. Not dreading it, Eliza's ankle healed. But the ache in her heart eased, replaced by a budding hope. As winter's first snow dusted the ground, the cabin stood complete, a sturdy home, with a stone hearth and windows that caught the morning light. They celebrated with a simple meal, inside the fire crackling warmly. "Couldn't have done it without you," Eliza said, her eyes shining. Jack shook his head. "You were doing it." "I just lend a hand," he paused. Gathering courage, Eliza. "I've been alone so long, I forgot what connection feels like. Watching you fight for this life, it reminded me I could fight for one too. If you'll have me, I'd like to build more than cabins with you." Tears welled in her eyes, but they were joyful. "Jack, I thought kindness like yours was gone from the world. But here you are." They married that spring, under a sky as blue as forget-me-nots, with the mountains as witnesses. Jack's ranch became their home, filled with the family they'd both longed for. A daughter born the next year, then a son. The cabin stood as a reminder. Rented to travelers, its walls echoing their story. In the end, it's the quiet acts of compassion that ripple out, turning strangers into kin. Healing wounds we thought eternal. Jack and Eliza learned that redemption comes, not from grand gestures, but from showing up one log, one day at a time, and in that, they found not just survival, but a love that made the frontier feel like home.